Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on when you're watching this edition of Hypnosis Week Live. Yes, it's me again, Alex William Smith by birth, but better known to many of you as the British bad boy of hypnosis, Jonathan Royal. And I am absolutely delighted to have a living legend of the hypnotherapy world join us on the show this week. This lady is the author of numerous best-selling books. She certainly in the 90s was what would then, certainly in England, but other places in the world as well, was considered a celebrity hypnotherapist. And the reason I'm doing that is because so many people ban that term around now, but then it was a massive deal. It meant a lot more than it does now. And she also arguably coined the phrase "stop smoking in 1 hour" in terms of smoking cessation hypnotherapy sessions. And that lady who you can see on screen, who we're welcoming now, is the one and only Valerie Austin. Well, welcome to the show, Valerie.
Hello, Jonathan. As I said, long time no see. I've been in it years.
Yeah, flipping heck, I know. So for the people who don't know, because there might be some people watching this who've only just got into the industry and obviously don't know that you've been around for decades. What was your journey that led you into all this? Because obviously there was a time when you weren't a hypnotherapist and a renowned trainer of the arts.
Yes, I came in it later in life because I was a journalist. I was an undercover journalist. I had my own magazines in London, and I suddenly got a bit fed up with, oh, this is a joke. This was in the 80s, the late 80s, and I was around the journalists, and I just got fed up of them starting to lie. The integrity was then, and that was nothing to do with what it is today. Today it's a joke, but there were some marvelous journalists there, you know, integrity and everything, and it started to move. And that's why I looked at hypnotherapy. I had been to Gil Boyne's 10 years before, and he'd helped me with a memory loss. And so I came back.
Can you, for people at home who obviously don't know your background, why did you need help with memory loss? I know, but obviously the viewers and listeners don't know your background.
I had a car accident in 1978, and I lost my memory for about a year and a half, for like 24 hours. I could only remember 24 hours. Right. And I was always good with press. And so I sold my story, and it said I'd been asked to be married in Hollywood, and it was, will bride remember her husband? And it was only put out there to see if I could find somebody that would help with my memory. And it was Gil Boyne from America, then a celebrity hypnotherapist, very famous, that was passing through England, saw my article, or the article, it was in the, I think it was in the, yeah, it was in the Mirror, and contacted my mother. And I was at the film festival in Cannes with a memory loss, and I forgot he'd suggested I could go over to America and get treatment from him free. Right. He knew it. I had very good. I was being asked to be married by a top, international editor of the Hollywood Reporter. It's a bit like royalty in Hollywood, and so he knew that I was a very good PR person, just to use me as a memory loss. And the hypnotherapists can't find people with proper memory losses. There's so few, but the ones that there usually get hospitalized. And so, it's very, or go to psychiatrists or something. So it was an enigma. And I got very famous because Gil Boyne did bring me to his courses, did help me with my memory, brought it a lot better than it was. It's about 2 weeks instead of 24 hours. And and then I would go to California every year, and I would present, because he told me where I should train. I trained in England. I had ABC was a training course then. It may be still going, and it was excellent. And I had a very good background, and I just was good at it. It was just, I suppose I was good at selling, and I'd been top sales person, and being in Hollywood, all that sort of come together, having my magazines, being journalists, all came together, and I was able to develop my own technique, which has been going for about 30 years.
It's interesting that you said you took to it like a duck to water, it sounded like. Now, I think the logic behind that is that a journalist has to have the skills of telling a good story. And I mean, even an ethical journalist. I know you mentioned before things now they've got into just Pinocchio storytelling, but you've got to be able to tell the facts in an interesting way as an ethical journalist, which is weaving your words and capturing the imagination, which of course is one of the core skills of a hypnotherapist as well.
Absolutely, and my husband has been studying hypnosis since he was a boy, and he's a writer, and does biographies on people like Rasputin and Hitler, and so he taught me how to, which I wasn't. I was like normal people doing research, but he taught me how to research properly. And so that helped. But he believed, because of my memory loss, I was working on my subconscious. That's how I lived. And so I was able to talk in regression, because my skill was regression. I was able to pick up and talk and know how subconsciousness worked. So I was talking to the subconscious differently to the average person or hypnotherapist. Yeah. And that's what I trained, an idiot-proof way to do it.
For people at home, Valerie's husband, please make sure I get this right, because I know you've been married in the past, is James Poole.
That's correct, yes.
You may have heard of it if you put James Poole in the internet, but with the word mesmerism, because he does do courses and stuff regarding, some will call it non-verbal hypnosis, but James will probably argue that it's not hypnosis, it's different, but that's a completely different discussion. Although I am going to ask Valerie, this is an awkward one for you, Valerie, given that you're married to the man himself. In that context, how do you perceive mesmerism? Because I personally, people see it as being the forerunner to hypnosis. Some people say it is hypnosis, but it's non-verbal. Ultimately, I believe it's all suggestion, full stop. But what's your views?
It's difficult to say, because it is different, but it is one of the forerunners. So it's where hypnotherapy was born. But it's different. It's the first energy therapy. And so you can actually, when I went on James's course as an observer, because I do, you probably know, hypnosis, just hypnosis, and, I don't add anything to it. And I saw mesmerism as a separate, or can be a tool. And I was excited because it can take quite a long time to learn it. You just don't learn it. It's difficult to explain, but when the penny drops, you can do quite extraordinary things, like, it's hard to explain. I had something wrong with my finger. I had a cactus in my finger. For years, it was coming up every year, and I couldn't understand it. With the mesmerism, what happened is we saw it come out. It was non-verbal, and it was just passes. You have to excuse me, I'm going to cough. I don't have a problem. But
all right, no worries.
Sorry. And probably because I haven't had a drink this morning. I've been too busy. And so anyway, it was exciting. We could actually see it come out, and there was quite a few of us. And that's what made me realize that there was how it was so good in the old days when it was out, because it was massive. People, it went all around the world. It was a very interesting subject.
Now, it's more of, I think it's the theatrical use of non-verbal suggestion on the one level, but on the other, I genuinely believe that it's not that different from what you do, or I do, or other hypnotherapists do. It just looks different because of the lack of words. But I think the thing that ties what we do now, so-called authoritarian, or even if it's Ericksonian style hypnotherapy and mesmerism together, is intent and the belief you have as the therapist to project that in an energetic, I'm going to use the word, even though I don't like getting into those areas, your intent creates an energy, arguably, that people can pick up on non-verbally.
Absolutely, yeah, you are correct in the big sense. But what I did find when we were doing the course, when I was in one of the courses, we had a lady come in and to learn, and she misinterpreted. So she ended up doing the hypnosis, and it didn't work the same. It works, it's hard to explain, it works differently. It's terribly, terribly powerful, but it's not everybody can do it. Some people can do it okay, but out of the courses, we had two excellent ones, you know, that were the top, but the others were just mediocre. It's something, I suppose it's because you need something just a little bit more, you know, than just hypnosis. You have to teach yourself to use your psychic, because you haven't got the words. You can use words, but you haven't got the words. And you can do it, and you can with hypnosis. You can do transport thoughts to somebody else, telepathy, but it seems to be a bit stronger with mesmerism. It's a wonderful tool for people. If they're a hypnotherapist, it's lovely. It's a real good to know all about the history and how it works and everything.
Well, I'll pop James's web link below this. Obviously, I'm putting your links are below for people who are at home. You can literally look under the video, but I'll pop James's link to the mesmerism info as well. I find it interesting because it's, on the one level, I could argue that they're very much the same. It's just a different presentation or a different state of mind or a different set of preconceived expectations from the client. So if they expect, you know, the hypnotist with the swinging watch or sleep, the deeper you go, the better you feel, and they're provided with that, then they're more likely to react. But if people expect it to be all mystical and the downward soothing passes, that maybe some people are more of a frame of mind that would work for them better just because of what's inside their head already.
It does help, yes. But as I say, I think you have to train your psychic to actually have more power to go across, and that takes training. But you know, it's similar. It's a little bit like having a bungalow, and you will have one floor and you have different rooms, but it's a bungalow. But the kitchen is different from the dining room, and yet it's in the same place, and so it's a bit similar in that way.
So let's push mesmerism aside a second. That was kind of what morphed into what most people generally accept as being hypnotherapy. And I'm going to push out of the way for people at home. Sorry, you may not like it, but I'm not going to mention Erickson type hypnosis, this permissive, conversational, I'm going to call it nonsense generally, because personally, I think the key to hypnosis is the authoritarian approach, which ultimately is certainly what's involved, as I understand it, in your smoking cessation. Stop smoking in the hour.
Yes, you are right, because I've always taught and always believed that the authoritarian is really, to start with, if you look the part, the part to be authoritarian, and it can be in different ways. I taught it to be behind a desk in a very, you know, office looking, nice, beautiful office looking, and looking important. So you look like the teacher. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way I presented myself. There's many different ways of doing it, but I found that was a good way. And I used to like to do business people and CEOs of companies and owners of banks and things like that. So it had to look the part. And your prices depend on what you're doing, where you're doing it, and what is your situation. Like, the same therapy can be done cheaper, mediocre, or very expensive. And depending on where you're doing it, how much it's costing you to get to where you are, how much your offices are and things like this, everything is dependable on it. But generally, hypnosis is, I believe, the royal jelly of any therapy, you know, because it's been medically examples. There's many medical research on medical hypnosis and proving that it works, and it's very exciting. It's exciting, and still people say now, even when I started in '89, now people still say, well, it's been fantastic. Why do not many more people know about it? And you probably had that. We've had that for years.
Yeah. Well, drug companies, ultimately.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Hypnosis wouldn't make drug companies any money. Might sound a bit conspiracy theory, but I mean, the thing is, drug companies make the money from getting people ideally dependent on taking drugs long term, whereas a good therapist like yourself can help people, for example, with long-term chronic pain to manage it without the need for being drugged up to the eyeballs.
That's absolutely true. Yes, it's marvelous for physical and psychological. We feel it works together.
So as I said earlier on, you coined the phrase "stop smoking in an hour." You certainly got all the media coverage in the late 80s and into the early mid 90s on a massive scale. Stop smoking in an hour. Harley Street hypnotherapist stops this person, which obviously you had something of an advantage, because with your journalism background, you've already had an insight in how to get the media interested in covering stuff.
I knew how to do a story. And what's quite fascinating is that although I knew people in the media, it wasn't easy to get through it. But it's like anything else, if you have a good story. And my first story was the one about the bride. Will the bride remember her husband? And that got me into knowing somebody in the mirror at the time, but you still have to have a good story. And so I put together, developed from other things, I developed the 1 hour situation. And I thought, well, the reason is I wanted to stop smoking as a journalist because I could prove it. You either smoked or you didn't. Yeah. And it's very easy to prove. Unlike weight or everything else, it's not easy to prove because people say, oh, well, maybe, whatever, you did something else. But with smoking, it was easy to prove. I put my prices high, not the highest, because there's another person, I can't remember his name, he was higher than me. And but I was high. And so I would have the story for the journalists if it worked or it didn't. So they could expose me or they could say it worked. And I was surprised at the success rate. I had a 95% success rate. It was amazing. And that's, sort of I would be able to, verify it because I was going through smokers like nobody's business,
So you followed up on them as well, did you, at intervals?
Yes, because what I did was the hardest thing. I created a fairly large company in 2000, it would be. I think it was 2000, yeah. And it was it's a very good company. And when I trained people, I wanted to make sure that they would get a high success rate. And I found that they could, as long as they did exactly like I did it, they could get the same success rate. And so I then created forms so that they would, and I did them myself and I had my company look at past people. But I made sure that I had the forms out, we had them professionally done, we had them so the medical board couldn't argue with it. It was actually so well done that it would prove each person that I trained their smoking technique. The problem was everybody was excited, but a lot of them didn't follow up. And I couldn't figure out why they didn't. And I think it was a confidence thing that they didn't follow up. They all said they did, but I actually, I was clever enough to find out that it wasn't just like that. And so, it was very hard to prove. Some of them did.
What you mean, your therapist that you trained, you think they were a bit scared of finding out it hadn't worked as well as they'd been told, because that would make them feel bad?
Yeah, they believed it, but they got a bit nervous of contacting the people. And also it's not easy, because with hypnosis you've got to have a constant flow of clients. And so if you have to phone everybody, and it was the phoning them a month, 6 months and a year. Now, as you're going through, that's going to develop a lot of phone calls. And of course, it's not easy to, when you've got very full practice, that's not easy to do. So there was all sorts of things, but, some of my top hypnotherapists that I've passed people over to, I know they can get, because I check that they do my technique. It's because my technique works for me, and it's easy to teach. And so it's just in the 7-day course I've had for many, many years. And it's changed hypnotherapy, because I remember in the 80s, no, the 90s it was, you used to only need about 50 hours training. And then it went to 75 hours. Mm-hmm. And then I said, if we're not careful, it'll go to 250 hours before. And I was laughed at. It was actually, they thought I was just wanting to get more people on my courses more or something. And I was laughed at. And not long after, it became 250 hours. And then all sorts of things that, that's when it's a very simple operation. It's, to learn how to hypnotize and to do a technique. It does need good training, but if you've got good training, but you do need to practice it. It's no use going away for it for a few years, as you've probably seen people do, and they come back and they've lost the confidence. Doctors was the worst at that, because they would love it when they came. I didn't like to have doctors on, because I'd say to them, do you have an hour with your client? No. Well, hypnosis is not for you, because you have to not only have the hour with your client, you need to have practice weekly, so that you keep your confidence, keep yourself together, keep things going. And because if you start to not do it, you lose a lot of it, you forget a lot of it, and your confidence goes. That's what I felt. And so doctors would be so happy and everything, then probably wouldn't see a client that they gave hypnosis for 3 months, and then make a real mess of it because they hadn't practiced it. And
like anything, without practice, if you don't use it, you lose it, as they say. Now, I couldn't agree with you more. Confidence, without a doubt, it is a key. Because if you don't feel confident within, you can try and fake it, but the client, they might not consciously be aware of it, but they'll pick up you're not fully confident in what you're doing, and that's just going to it's not going to help them. So, there's so many different approaches. We're going to take smoking for a little while, just because it's one thing that you're massively well known for, and did break that area of stopping 1 hour, because there were people doing it in 3 sessions, people who were doing courses saying do it in 5 sessions, and then you came up, it's 1 hour, this is it. It's very largely authoritarian, the approach. People can obviously go to the links below to find your websites, and also on Amazon, if you type in Valerie's name, you'll find her books come up, and you'll get some of an insight in to the smoking cessation approach she put together. But obviously, to get that fully, you would need to contact and do a course, as it were. But let's see how much she's prepared to tell us now. What made your approach? You've done your research. It's 95% effective. What was different about it? What bits did you add together? Because it's as you say, your approach. You put bits from here, bits from there. How did you make it different?
Well, as I was saying that when I met Gil Boyne, he told me where I should learn, train, because he was in America, I was in England. And then when I trained, he invited me as a trainer. And so I was training for 10 years, each year in California. And he would introduce me every time as the person that his success, and he'd say how great I was and things like that. And so I was quite famous in the hypnotherapy world. Now, when you're famous in the hypnotherapy world, everybody wants to treat you. So, you know, they'll say, oh, and so you're brought up into, so I had the best teachers. Gil Boyne would tell me who I should train with in the court, in his conferences. He gave me the best books. People gave me the best of everything as I was going through my, as I say, journey in it. But early on, I, very fortunate, met some very interesting people, the hypnotherapists, the old style hypnotherapist, and one of them had a really good technique, and I sort of added things to it, so it was like there's 10 things in the technique, and it is really hard. You can't do this over and over again. I would say in a week, 6 is about the most you can do. That's why you charge high. But it has such a success rate. And I've always said that when the person comes in, you say, well, if there's any problem, you can come back for a second time. That is part of the charges in therapy. Because I believe if you just say it's guaranteed and go away, they get a bit nervous, and that might create a lack of confidence. So they've always got that to come back to. And I found that there was about 5% that came back. That was all. But, you know, we're talking about different times. We're talking about in the 90s. We're talking about, it was very exciting. I had loads of publicity. I had clients that it was working on, it was fantastic. And so I then took the stop smoking, and I could open the country with it. I would go to Malaysia. I would open the country. I went and I ended up teaching in their university there, the whole course, which I actually donated. They asked me how much I wanted, but I donated because my prices were high and I didn't think it was fair, so I donated it. So I was going from one famous area to the other. I was on television, I was on newspapers. It was marvelous. I enjoyed the 90s in the Malaysia, going back and forward. But, you know, I would, and which may be useful for other people, if you have put yourself as a business hypnotherapist. I was dealing with owners of banks, and I know one of them that I did therapy for was able to go back to his bank, and what he would usually do, it was confident fellow, present one thing, everybody would pick at it, and then he might get that through. After the course in hypnosis, he went back, he presented with 6 things, got all the 6 things passed, and earned 3 million, and that was in the 90s on that day. And so that is what's exciting about hypnosis. It can change a person's complete confidence just like that, and they can get back into, you know, a complete different role of, you know, of work. It was very exciting.
So in terms of the actual session when you were doing the smoking, I mean, there's authoritarian, which, you know, there's aversion therapy, there's parts therapy, there's a million and one approaches out there.
I'll tell you which is in it, because I don't like doing this. First of all, you do the introduction. My introduction was the important thing. That was what made it. I covered everything in that, and it had to be 20 minutes. So 20 minutes of the hour was introduction. If the people that I trained, they'd have to send me an audio of the introduction, because I said, if it's not 20 minutes, you've not done it right. If it's over 20 minutes, you're wasting time. And so they'd have to actually learn it. So this 20 minutes all it was doing was giving examples that's correcting every question the person could possibly ask. And so, and if they ask, you know, if they wanted to talk, I said, oh no, we can talk about that later. I'll just listen to me, and they never have the questions later, because I sorted it all out. Then I would put them into a progressive relaxation. I'd never use a quick one for the stop smoking in 1 hour, because I needed to bombard them with lots of things, so it sort of mixed the mind up so much that you give up, you know, the subconscious gives up, says, okay, it's bad for them, you know.
Sensory overload.
And so I just did it's a very good, I've used the same one. I've used one in 30 years. I've only used one progressive relaxation. Don't move from it, because it's got secret little obstacles that break that down, so the person goes into deeper hypnosis. And then I would do parts therapy. because parts therapy was developed from hypnosis, so I created a little bit of my own to deal with the smoking. And then I would do an aversion, and I would add the aversion, and then I would give them a television screen and see themselves, somebody offering them a cigarette. And at the end of it, I'd bring them out of hypnosis and give them, I always tell them that they could come back, and but to do that in the 48 hours, don't make it longer than that, come straight back, because I need to see you quickly. And if they needed to come back, I would push them in. So what happens? Because if you don't push them in when you're doing it that way, they forget and don't want to come back and think it doesn't work. And I needed that. I needed a high success rate to keep my background, to keep my credibility. And it was pressure when I went to, I did Stop Smoking in a Paradise Island. That was pressure, because everybody knows each other. And so if it goes wrong, and I was, a bit like that when I was starting doing it, and I'm still known in that Langkawi. People still know me there. In fact, the Duchess of Westminster heard about me there and came on one of my courses. And so, I've had some superb, interesting people on them, and I'm sure you have as well, Jonathan.
Excellent. Well, I mean, it's a subject that attracts interesting people, some in a good way and some batshit crazy at the other end of the scale. So smoking obviously is the thing that you're massively known for. However, you've obviously dealt with all manner of other things as well. As anyone who goes searching on Google and types your name in will find, from press cuttings that were covered. What particular thing would you say you enjoyed dealing with most?
I'm not sure. I'm just trying. I enjoy dealing with. That's why I did it. I enjoyed dealing with some really good, interesting brains, which was in the CEOs of companies and bank managers and princes of different countries. Not ones here, but I had some touching on royalty, but that was mainly from Asia. And I just loved working with minds. It was like a game to me because I didn't do regression at all in Stop Smoking, but I was able to separate it. And I think this might be very useful for people that are doing Stop Smoking, because sometimes a client will go in and they may go into a regression or may not. But I would ask the subconscious if it was appropriate that they could deal with that matter at another time and it wouldn't stop them smoking. Perfect. And it had to say yes. It said yes or no. If it was no, if not, why not? But it was all generally yes. And so I actually separated it from needing it to be linked to some trauma. And that, I think, was also the price. I was always high because I didn't get any I'll give it a go people.
And also when things are high, people assume that it must work. Otherwise, why the hell would somebody have the audacity to charge that amount?
Yes, yeah.
I was going to say I won't mention names, but there's certain television life coaches that I have done public relations for in past years who... I don't know what they exactly charge right now, but I know that about 3 years ago, they were charging £2,500 United Kingdom sterling. To put that in perspective, this is being recorded on the 27th of April, 2020, if you're seeing this in years to come, for a breakthrough session with them for whatever it was, habits, of phobias, addictions, didn't matter what. They weren't saying it's for an hour. You probably ended up with them for like 3 or 4 hours if need be, but £2,500, and that was 4 years ago they were charging that. I believe they charge more now. But the thing is, I believe the people who do actually book with them and pay that out are cured before they get there. when they made that commitment?
Well, when you're doing, mine was much higher than that. When I was in, when I'm, at the moment I'm semi-retired, and so I'm selling my courses on, they're online courses. But I found a way that you can do it, and I'm very happy with it and proud of it. So you won't probably see it advertised anywhere because it's usually from word of mouth. And I've actually done people in America, not done them, but trained them in America. Excellent, just terrific, but it's a specific way. But when I was having clients, I was charging $6,000 for a client, but that was about 5 or 6 sessions. It was hectic I had to make it work because I had a reputation to keep. And I saw the most extraordinary things happen. But you can't do as much as the quicker hypnosis things. It's quite hectic going on. You've got to be really hot at it. And the reason I stopped doing the clients and doing regression is because when I had a fall, and I wasn't agile enough with my mind to be able to do as good as I was. I could have done it, but I couldn't. I didn't want to spoil my reputation or the person that was coming to see me. It was with something that was happening. So I'm, I suffer from a fall. And so that was why not many people have heard of me. I didn't just go and retire. I still do some courses, not courses, but I mainly do self-hypnosis lectures and things like that.
Well,
and it was quite...
I'm just going to segue into that, because below this video, there will be another link, and that link is for Valerie's self-hypnosis book. Now, she has 2 major self-hypnosis books that I'm aware of. She might tell me there's more, but there's one that came out a number of years ago, which you'll find on Amazon. And then there's a more recent, and it's a different book that is at the Self-Hypnosis book website link that is below this video, where I know she goes into a lot regarding 2 people in particular, Emile Coué and Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, time to show the book.
Is that the latest one? The latest one?
The other one was the first one I did in 1992, called the same. Well, it was just called Self-Hypnosis by Thorson's. That went on for 20 years. It was a long time before, that's where everybody came to for my courses. This one is by Hay House, and I've done 7 altogether. But the only 2 that's now still in publication is the first one and this one.
But you can find them on Amazon or eBay if you go searching, if you want to get the in-between ones as well. But the latest edition, as I said, you mentioned on the website, the links down there, guys and girls, Napoleon Hill and Emile Coué has been very important to the whole ethos. Could you explain a little bit for people at home? Obviously, Emile Coué is the man who coined the phrase mental blockade. Day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. That was in every way, See, I told you I was on a mental block, Valerie. Yeah, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. That's it, Emile Coué. And Napoleon Hill, of course, famously wrote Think and Grow Rich.
That's it. And that was the biggest set. It was in the 1990s when the Bible was the best, the biggest seller because it went everywhere. Mm-hmm. It had better sales than that. It was amazing. Every CEO had it. It's still amazing, that Think and Grow Rich. I read it. I was so excited with it, and he made an awful lot of money. He did an awful lot of good, and he was a very clever man. And there is still a society with it.
So what about Emile Coué? Because he did do testing, and there's papers out there that literally just by getting people to say day by day in every way I'm getting better and better, or similarly structured self-affirmations, self-suggestions, self-hypnosis commands, call them what you will, that people were able to dramatically change their lives if they did this morning, noon and night.
It was extraordinary. He was so famous. He had so many people come to him. And why I put him in the book, because a lot of hypnotherapists find it hard to make a living. And, you know, and they think that you should, the trouble is a lot of people think, well, you should give it away because it's, you know, it's a bit more spiritual, but it isn't. It's actually a business, but you can do so much good with it. It's like a doctor is a business, you know, but you don't think of a doctor shouldn't charge a decent amount, or should I say a specialist, especially surgeon, charges a lot of money, you know, because they've had so much background that they've had to go through. And so that I was trying to show the hypnotherapist there is life, there is a very good, you can have it, and depending on where you want to be, and if you're self-sufficient, you can give it away free. However, the trouble is some people think when it's free it's of no use, and so that's a bit of a struggle. And so, you know, it's the way you tell it, really.
So what's your definition of self-hypnosis, Valerie? Because obviously you've written best-selling books on the subject. What would you say self-hypnosis is? Because there's so many different views and opinions on it.
It's getting into I'm saying what I believe. In order to put somebody into hypnosis, you need to have the confidence, and the person has to have the confidence in you. That's why only the stop smoking would I have in one session. Every other session, because I did regression, I felt the person needed to feel comfortable with you. So the first one was just giving the introduction and the progressive relaxation, bringing them out, and then they come back the second time, and then I would do regression. I found if I didn't do regression and just did parts, that I may lose the client. So the regression to me was, so it was a wow. And so, but I had to have them in decent hypnosis. It didn't have to be deep, but I had to have had their belief structure. The more famous you get, the better belief structure you receive. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things. How you look, what your office is like, how you present yourself. If you're in Glastonbury, I mean, you have an awful lot of clients that are more hippie looking, and that's fine. But you know, the charges do relate to it. What I was showing is a business model. I was a business model, and I was going to fix them. And so the money made me work at 100% because I had to make sure that they changed. So I had enjoyment out of working with the subconscious, because it was a bit like a game. The subconscious will be battling with me, and I will be having to change that mind of the subconscious to let the person know that it was going to be better for them than the problem that they were stuck with. And so, and it was just amazing to see so many successes. And I'm sure a lot of hypnotherapists feel that. It's just a marvelous, as long as they don't, if they charge too cheap, then they have too many clients and then they wear out. And so, you know, you've got to balance it, and it depends on where you want to go. I miss jacuzzi. I like going to 5-star hotels. I like traveling. I think I must have been very wealthy in my past life because I think, why didn't I have that, you know? And so I like to mix with, you know, to people that had that, and people might think it's not.
How important was that element of it, Valerie, in terms of getting clients? Because a lot of therapists, they can be incredibly skilled in terms of therapeutic techniques, but sadly, the majority of courses out there these days, I know you do cover marketing and getting work, but a lot of courses out there, the element of marketing is practically non-existent. So a lot of therapists, they might be equipped, but when it comes to actually getting clients, they've not been shown how to market. Did you do a lot of what I suppose it would be called these days, they would call it networking, because, to attract your high profile clients, your business people, your celebrities, my experience is you need to kind of move in those circles, go and drink where those people drink, go and eat where those people eat.
Yes, you need to go in those circles. And I would, in those days, I was quite young. And so I'd sometimes go to the nightclubs or fun clubs and I'd wear my suit. I would get clients in the clubs. I think it was a smart suit, a black suit, with white blouse or something. Like in London, it's like you're coming from work anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I don't mean the dance discotheques, but the clubs that are rather nice. And so I would be constantly talking to people and for clients, but I was interested they'd tell me something wrong with them and I'd say I could do that in my head, and so it was hard not to talk to people about clients, about being a client, because you could actually felt like you could fix them.
Yeah.
Which I did, which I was good, but I wish I could be the same as I was then, but I'm just enjoying being good.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, Valerie, and never forget, you may be winding things down a bit, but you've got so many people out there that you've taught around the world that are still going out there and doing what you've taught them. So you are still helping.
And I was brought up in hotels. So it wasn't that I was a snob.
It's in Blackpool.
In Blackpool, yes.
Yeah.
And so if, we got up to a hotel where we had a chef and it was going up and up into a chef and a ballroom. But if the staff didn't turn up, you'd have to clean the toilets. If the chef got drunk, you had to cook the breakfast. So I wasn't a snob. It was just that I enjoyed the nicer things of life. And so I could work, I found taxi drivers to be as clever and as everybody's intelligent. It just is, the main people are intelligent. It's just how they use their intelligence. So it could be a taxi driver or a head of a company. It's just how they've used and where they've been pointed their intelligence to.
Now, that's interesting, because everyone's got intelligence to a degree. And as you just said, it depends how they use it or what their environment structures them to. How do you find? Because I suppose this applies to self-hypnosis as much as it does to treating clients one-to-one. You can get clients and you can say to them, okay, imagine in your mind's eye the television screen, see an image of you in the future and whatever. And some people afterwards might say, well, when you said that to me, I thought it, but I didn't see anything. Others say they see it in like glorious technicolor. What I'm getting at is, how do you personally deal with the fact that people do psychologically react to things differently?
That was in the introduction. I covered it in the introduction.
Oh, right. Okay. In the pre-talk.
The pre-talk. And it was very simple, because I want to help people. So I'm giving out my little bits of things that I found very useful. In fact, wouldn't do a client without it. I'd say there's I'd say 2/3 of the world are visual and the other third aren't. And so you may be one or the other. So let me do a test on you. And I'd say, you can do it now. Close your eyes. Mm-hmm. And I want you to think of a chair. And I want you to think of, just have a look what it's made of and what type of chair it is. Now open your eyes. Now, did you see it or just know what it looked like?
It was a bit of both, that, but it was like I was seeing it, but it was a bit, I could have done when we turned the light on in the room.
Right, now you are in between. Some people are really visual. Some people, like myself, are not visual. So that's why I keyed on to that. So I would say, well, it doesn't matter. In hypnosis, it doesn't matter how you see things. When I say to you, see something, you just do it like the chair. So I don't need to change my language anymore. Tell me when you see it, I can say. And so I don't need to change the language. And then I'll say, and it's just like that. It's not like Technicolor but it's like that when you go into hypnosis. And that just takes seconds.
Essentially, whatever they say, it's clearly right for them. That's how they experience it. And you just tell them that that's how it's going to be and that's fine, because from your experience, that'll work perfectly for them.
Yeah, I would add to it by saying, well, it's great if they were visual. Say they're not visual. I say it's great to be visual, but I'm non-visual. I don't see things. I just know what they look like. But it doesn't matter in hypnosis. It works anyway in the story.
Yeah. So you've overcome a potential negative self-suggestion of, oh, this isn't working the way it should do, because you've dealt with it in advance.
Yes, absolutely. And also, when I put somebody into hypnosis, especially in the stop smoking, I give them it's their problem if they don't go in, if they're not listening to me. I use the words I'm saying, when you're ready to go into hypnosis. And I'll say, when people are doing self-hypnosis, like from my book, I'll say it's your responsibility to listen to the tapes, to put yourself in hypnosis. If your mind, goes away for your shopping list, bring it back. And eventually you will get good, deep hypnosis. Simple.
See, I think there's a little key element there of it's your responsibility. Yes. And I always say that, I blatantly say on my website, there is on the therapy page, it says, before you book a session with me, be aware that you, the client, are going to do most of the work. And I actually blatantly say I've never stopped anyone smoking in my life. I've never helped anyone lose weight. The way I put it is that I give them the inner resources and correct state of mind to be able to carry on doing in an easy, automatic manner that they decide to do when they come to the consulting room. So they're the one who puts the cigarette out and says, I've stopped smoking. They're the one who has to say, no, I'm not going to have the extra slice of cake. All I'm going to do is give them the tools to make that easier for them to do. So I'm blatantly saying it's down to you.
Yes, and it is. It's absolutely correct. It's down to you. But what I did find that you might find interesting, and a lot of hypnotherapists, I stopped actually doing my 7-day courses training about 4 years ago, maybe 5. And I stopped because it's very difficult to learn. You have to do it. I did it in 7 days, and the evening, it was compact. And it didn't seem like it was hard, but it was so full of information. And I found that they had to do the induction exactly as it was, not the long one, but the Elman. I used Elman, sort of Elman. It was more or less the same. And I found that for the 30 years, not everybody could learn it by the end. Usually one would not be able to learn it by the end. And that's because the nerves, or they didn't get on the course and stand up, or whatever it was. And then I had smaller courses, and just by just near that 5-year mark, I found not one of them could learn that, because it's a bit complicated, but it's only a paragraph. They couldn't learn it word for word. Not one. In one class I had, not one could learn it. I thought, people are losing it. People are losing the focus. And so therefore, I stopped doing that sort of course. That's what it was. That's what it was.
It's programming people's brains to not have the attention span.
So it took me 3 to 4 years to perfect my online course, to overcome that and overcome the need for practice one-to-one in the course. So I'm so proud of it. I believe I've done it. And so if anybody really wants, it's there. But I only see about 3 or 4 people a year. Train, because I like to, spend a lot of time with them on the, sort of on the Skype or the Zoom. But there's plenty of good courses out there. There's a lot more bad ones, I think, because I was on one of the hypnotherapist, sites, and the questions they were asking, I couldn't believe it. They were so.
I know, Valerie. I don't know about. I think it's one of two things, or perhaps a combination of both. I think there's the element of there's sadly a lot of courses out there being run by people who, what would I call them? They don't know any better because they've done a course, then the person who taught them's charged them for the master practitioner course. It's like the NLP cult. And then they do a trainer's course, and they're going out there running their own courses when they've never really seen clients in the real world like you and me have. So that it's the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
That's one element. But then I think there's also the element of people, sick mind fraud. Sigmund Freud said that a lot of therapists are drawn to it, searching for answers to their own problems.
Yes.
And that need to feel special and wanted and needed and appreciated, cared for, cherished. That by going onto these social media groups and going, oh, I've got a client coming tomorrow for this problem. How can I deal with it? They don't realise they're making themselves look daft, because if they'd learned properly, if they'd been taught properly, they would have a toolkit that they'd be able to use for anything and everything.
That's absolutely right.
But they want the attention of the group speaking to them, I think, sometimes.
Some questions are really frightening. I mean, they're so thick.
Yeah, I know. Prime example, it's only a couple of days ago I saw somebody on one of the groups I was having a look in on, and they asked the question, I've got somebody coming tomorrow. I'm thinking, well, why are you asking this at 6 o'clock at night the day before? Coming tomorrow, who's suffers from heart conditions, has breathing difficulty, and listed all these medical issues. Do you think I should tell him to come at another time and make contact with his doctor first? The fact it's even crossed your mind that you should need to ask that should give you the answer. Yeah. You've just listed that this person could effectively just, if you breathe wrong, could fall dead in your chair. It might be a good idea to, liaise with the person's doctor first and make sure there's somebody in the room with them at the same time to witness you haven't done anything you shouldn't have done, type of thing.
Absolutely. I had a form and they had to tick the form, and at the end was suicide.
Right.
Tick that. I'm afraid I'll need to have your psychiatrist note first, because if anybody then committed suicide, even though you hadn't, they'd just come to your room and you just did give them an introduction and they committed suicide afterwards, guess who they would come to, wondering what you've done because you're a hypnotherapist.
Well, certainly the media would, at the very least, even though there'd be no foundation in it. I mean, that did happen to stage hypnotist in the early 90s. A lady died after about 5 hours after a stage hypnosis show. Now, years later, it was proven that she choked on her own vomit and was overcome with alcohol, and she'd had a fit and all manner of things. And basically, they categorically said it had nothing to do with hypnosis. But for a few years, all the media were saying, woman dies after hypnosis show. And
it was awful. It was awful for hypnotherapists. A lot of people went under with that because they just couldn't get the clients. And, and there was one, it was a famous one before that. And he was not even a hypnotherapist. And it was to do with he taped people and he's supposed to have been doing something naughty. But it came out that on the advert, it was hypnotist extraordinaire, come after dark, free, or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
and they said he had all these tapes. He had one, and I found out, being a journalist, that one of the journalists got paid for the big story that went all around the world. That destroyed everybody, and so. But fortunately, we've been fine for so many years, and so people are too busy.
Fingers crossed. But as I always say to my students, these days, for what it costs to buy a little webcam, which is what, 10-15 quid you can get them as cheap as, record every session, I say, tell the clients in advance, advertise the fact so you've got informed consent, they know they're being filmed, and ensure that you back that up onto external hard drives that are kept under lock and key to keep with GDPR and data protection laws and regulations. But if you set it recording before the person walks into your consulting room and don't turn it off till they've left, so if need be, a forensic video expert can confirm there's been no editing, you can never get accused of doing anything inappropriate to your client. You cannot be accused of saying something that could be dangerous, because it will show exactly what you said and what you did.
Absolutely. I was suggesting this years ago, because especially men are very, you know, it's difficult for men. So that is, you know, really, really excellent information.
And did you encourage people? Oh, it's not so much of an issue with a lady therapist having a lady client or a male client, but would you advocate telling people to bring somebody with them in certain circumstances?
No, because that person will not. Well, if it was, you see, I was doing regression, so that's a whole different deal, you know. Yeah. It's different, but I wouldn't want them in even to stop smoking, because they're doing the parts therapy, and the parts therapy can be a little bit revealing, but they won't reveal it if there's someone there. And so the answer would be no.
What about children?
Children is like when I was doing it, there wasn't a problem, but now it's all sorts of problems. And so it depends on the age. I mean, there wasn't a problem when I was doing it. I do the boy for wetting his pants, and he was probably about 7. And I'd done a course on children with technique. Oh, I can't think of his name. He was brilliant at it. And but nowadays, I don't know. I think I'd be very careful. You know, I think if you're going to do children, you specialise in it, and then you check all the angles that you can come in problems with it as dealing with children, and you would probably bring the parent in rather than when we didn't, but you probably bring them in now because of various things. So,
safeguarding, as they call it in England. Yeah.
Oh, it'll be difficult. And you know, now you're not allowed to say so many words, so many things. And so, you know, the hypnotherapists that would be able to have a license to speak normal is now, especially if they're being recorded. Before it didn't really matter, but now, of course, you've got to be careful, political correct. You know, our hands are tied behind our backs a lot of the time, because we've got to watch for that, you know.
Yeah, otherwise somebody could claim it's got nothing to do with hypnosis, the reason why they got upset, but they could claim they got upset because of something we said, because of all the new, as you say, political correctness.
And I can't give an example because it's politically incorrect. I think people can work out what we mean, and I think the best way around that is obviously through your, if you have one, pre-session questionnaire or your pre-talk when you're talking to the client, as they would say in NLP, calibrate the client, see how they talk, how they term things, pay attention to that, and talk in their terms, so that way you can't. That's good, but you never know how they think.
Wow, yeah, that's true. Yeah, always err on the side of caution. Yes, indeed. Oh wow, we've gone just over the hour, so I'm going to have to bring this to a close in a minute. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody at the end. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone watching or listening, whether you're watching on YouTube, Vimeo, or listening on the podcast, there will be links in the description below this video or audio to all of Valerie's books, websites, and courses. As I always say, get a notepad and pen. The hour's flown by so quickly, and you might think that we've not discussed that much. But as I always say, if you get a pad and pen and watch or listen again, there have been nuggets of gold and gems of diamonds to be mined out of the past hour that truly can help you be more successful, both in your therapeutic techniques, your confidence levels, and your success in running your business, because everything that Valerie shared with you is what she has done in the real world. So, you know, the success she's had speaks for itself. And it can for you guys and girls as well. If you actually, they say knowledge is power, but it isn't. You've got to apply that knowledge and take action on it. So to bring things to an end, Valerie, thank you again for your time. What would your top tip be to people? Because the majority of people watching this are probably already involved in hypnosis on some level, although there'll be a small element who are, you know, looking for further training, who may well go to the links below and get in touch with you. What would your top tip be to people in terms of them becoming the best therapist they can possibly become?
I would say go back to the old school and read books like Watkins, going medical, things like that, and going into libraries, because not always you can, it may sound like you can get everything on the internet, but it's just really nice to go to the library like I did to write my book and look at the EQA and the various, you know, sort of, and get a feel for the real hypnosis, because, and also I would look at the age of the person that's training. Because, you know, to see how much experience they have, because a lot of the older, really good hypnotherapists have died off, but they died off at 90 and 98.
Yeah.
And one thing is good about it is that if you do hypnosis, you tend to live a long time.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. I say quite often that there's very little new, if anything, under the sun. There's only changes and variations in what's gone before, and quite often some people out there running courses can over egg the pudding, so to speak. And if you go back to the kind of books Valerie just mentioned, when hypnosis wasn't even called hypnotherapy, but I'm not talking back in mesmerism, there was a kind of mid phase where it was given names like suggestive therapeutics, and those kind of books, you look at them, and I swear, if you've not studied them, you'll read them and you'll go, oh, I went on a course a couple of years ago and they claimed that was a new technique, but it's in this book from decades and decades ago. They say if you want to hide a secret, put it in a book. If you want to find the secrets, go and find the books. Do as Valerie said, and obviously check out the links below this video. Thank you all for watching, and thank you very much indeed for your time, Valerie. It's been an absolute pleasure.